And we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm sure there's a few girls waiting in the wings for this talk. I'm Anita McLaughlin. Lovely to see you all here. I've got the beautiful Laurelle tuning in from way up north in the country. Hi, Laurelle.
Hi, Anita.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Nice and warm up here in Darwin.
Yeah, I've got my jumper on today and a scarf. So for Brizzy, it's not too bad, but yeah, you win. You win. I am thrilled to have Laurelle here today, girls. This chat's part of our Lunchtime Live series, and if you are new to Sequins and Sand, welcome. If you have been around a while, it's wonderful to see you again. I'm so thrilled that you're here. I'm jumping out of my skin, ready to hear what Laurelle has to say today, because it's all about Outback road trip. And it's going to be a two-part series. And today we'll kick off with part one, with part two coming in a few weeks' time. But Laurelle knows, oh, g'day, Lizzie. Happy Friday. Some of the girls are coming in, Laurelle. Laurelle knows so much about the Outback, and I'll let her tell you more about that. But first, I'll share with you how we met. We met through the wonderful Her Business Network in Sydney. I think we were at a live together, weren't we, one day, Laurelle? Yeah, we were there. We caught up there. And Laurelle's also shot with me for some togs, which is very nice of her. So that's a bit about our background. But when we realised that we had some synergy, like travel with Sequins and Sand goes hand in glove. We both recognised that this was an opportunity not to pass up, that there's a way that we can connect our two businesses together. So welcome, Laurelle. Thank you so much for giving up so much of your precious time to do this with us. We really do appreciate it. Why don't you start by telling everyone where you're tuning in from? Where are you?
Oh, thanks, Anita. Thanks for having me. You know, I never pass up an opportunity to talk about the Outback, and I'm tuning in from Darwin, where I live, and it's my hometown is Melbourne, so it's about almost 4,000 kilometres away from there. So yeah, I have lived in Darwin for 5 years, and I lived in Alice Springs for 13 years. So I've been in the territory for about 18, and it's funny, I only came for 2, and I thought I'll just do a little 2-year stint, see what living in the Outback's all like, and I just fell in love with it. So yeah. I haven't left.
It gets under your skin, doesn't it? It really. Yeah. It's quite polarising, because I lived in Darwin for a couple of years with a military posting. My husband was posted to the military there, and I absolutely fell in love with the place. I think you either love it or you don't. There's not a lot in between. But my daughter was born there as well, so Darwin holds a very special place in our hearts. I think it's an awesome place, and I think every Australian should get up there and have a look at it. It's magical, and the Outback as well, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
It is, and I think a lot of my friends and family down south, they probably get sick of me talking about it, so thanks for the opportunity to talk about it somewhere else. But yeah, at the moment in Darwin, you know, we're in the dry season, so it's still warm. It's 33 odd degrees each day, but the last week I haven't had the air conditioner on at all, which is very unusual for me, and we've got down to a temperature overnight of about 19, 20. So
that's nice for sleeping.
Sorry to all those southerners. But of course, in Alice Springs, 1,500 kilometres down the road, at the moment in winter, you're getting up to, 5 degrees overnight, 0 below 0. So, for one territory, it's not a state, of course, a territory, you've got vastly different climates, and I find that fascinating in itself, and that means vastly different landscapes as well. So yeah, when I came to the territory, I actually before I moved there, I started out as a tour guide with a big coach company. So I often had 50 people behind me. ready to lap up all the information, and just loved that. And I travelled on all the outback roads in Australia, and I think my heart fell into Alice Springs, so I moved there. And then after a few years, I thought, all those self-drive tourists, they're missing out on all the information we used to give on the coaches. And so I started writing it all down, and it turned into an audio guide. So,
and that's your business. That's your DIY tour guide.
That's right.
Girls, she won't ever talk much about this because she's a bit shy, our Laurelle, and very modest. But she has won 2 awards with that business, a national award and a very coveted Brolga, which is an NT Tourism Award. I even know about the Brolgas.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That's a great effort. So congratulations. You've done really well.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we've done, because I lived in Alice Springs, I did the Alice Springs to Uluru route, and there's about 2.5 hours of commentary there, even though it's 460 kilometres drive. You don't need to be listening to me all the time, but and then the West Macdonnell Ranges out there, which is all the gorges and waterholes. It's surprising that how many people don't know about the West Macdonnell Ranges. So it's a very special place. Great place to use your swimmers and your togs.
All those waterholes.
All those waterholes. So if you've ever dreamt of swimming in, waterholes with sheer red cliffs surrounding you, then that's the place to be.
Yeah, beautiful. And those waterholes, I mean, we get into some details, but they're just some of the gems that await you, that you, as you say, you don't even think about, which is why having a tour, some audio or something to guide you is really important. And I know for a lot of our girls listening in, whether now or later on the recording, we recently did a little pop survey of what the girls wanted to do once COVID lockdown finished. And there was a resounding majority who said, we are going to go on a road trip and we're going to do it within the first 6 months. But road trip was it. And I just thought, this is great. This is wonderful for our regional areas, for people to get to know their own country. And then this whole Outback thing just kind of clicked in as well with that. So if we do want to go on an Outback road trip, you don't just fill up the car and head off and go, right, wherever the wind takes us, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to, So can you take us through some basics of how an Outback road trip is different, say, to a coastal road trip, which most of us are doing, and what some of the top tips are that you need to consider when you're planning for one?
Sure. As soon as our borders open, we will welcome you all with open arms. Hopefully that'll be August, might be September. We're still waiting to hear. But definitely an Outback road trip is so different to travelling on the coast. And I have learnt, and I'm still learning 18 years later, and, have made my own mistakes. And, even last weekend I went out camping out bush, and before I took off, I had to think, right, have I got enough air in my tyres? Have I got enough water? Always take water. My tyre, it's my engine all right? Check all those things, which, I've learned a few things over the years. Is my spare tyre okay? So I guess, some of the tips, if you're going on a long trip, for a couple of weeks or longer, definitely pop your car in for a service and tell them what you're doing. And even if you don't know anything about cars, just get them to check all the nuts and bolts and things that could fall off. And it's really good to take tools with you, even if you don't know what to do with them. One of my brothers once said to me, actually, even if you don't know, have the tools on you, because someone will come across you who will know how to use it.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of travel on my own up and down the highway. So I really am very conscious of my safety and what I would need to do, what I need to carry with me. Speed limits, we're a bit faster up here in some places. We've got 130 kilometres an hour, so that's lots of fun for people. But of course, at those speeds, you've got to really have your wits about you. So drive at a speed that suits you.
And you've got those big road trains too, haven't you? Things like that on the roads, which are a little bit, you don't just put the foot down and go and get around those so easily.
No, some of those road trains can be 9-10 cars in length, or they have four trains on them, especially the fuel carriers. And I remember when I used to take them over, my knuckles would go white and I'd hold my breath. But now I'm pretty used to it. I always flash them with my lights, before I'm about to take over, so they know I'm coming. And but it can be pretty scary. But yeah, you've just got to have your wits about you. Sometimes the verges on the highways, there's dirt very close to the edge of the road, so you don't want to be drifting off into the dirt, because that's when your car can kind of get out of control. So, and the best thing about the biggest thing you should do is plan. There's very remote, vast distances, sometimes a couple of 100 kilometres between services and fuel. So get your maps out, get the internet, and search where you might stop for toilet stops, fuel stops. There's Wi-Fi is limited up and down the highway. That has improved over the years, but you could drive for hours without any mobile access. So if you need to be in touch with home, it might be worth having a sat phone on you, whether you buy it or hire it.
Can you hire those like in Darwin and or Alice before you set out?
Yeah, you can. Of course, you have to get it back to them. It depends if you're going one way or doing circles. So you could hire it from home somewhere, a communications retailer, I think. And I guess the difference with the coast, you might think a couple of 100 Ks is a big day on the coast. So you've got to kind of be aware, how long do I want to drive for? How long am I willing to drive for? Does my back get sore? I've made the mistake of driving 500 kilometres in one go just till I need more fuel, and my back is just stuffed. So you just got to know your limits and where you might like to rest for the night. And there's lots of accommodation opportunities at roadhouses. There's lots of, if you've got a caravan, you're self-sufficient, or a tent. There's some roadside stops where the trucks might pull in, and other caravanners and campers. So yeah, you've really got to plan out your days, I think.
And there's Claire Ann, who shares the same surname as you, so I'm thinking she's a relative of some sort. Hello, Claire Ann. Nice to see you. And Karen Locke, who's also tuning in. I don't know if you know Karen.
I do.
But Claire Ann says petrol station closing times. So not only where they're located, but are they going to be open? So as you said earlier, you might not be able to go, you know what, I'm going to travel from dawn till dark and just stop wherever, because some of these places may not be open. And then so when you start to plan for an Outback road trip, take us through like your very simple steps, Laurelle. Do you get a map out and you go, okay, I'm going to go from here to here, and then you start researching where the stops might be along the way, or how do you approach it?
Yeah,
second nature to you, but to the rest of us newbies.
It's almost hard to put myself in that place, because I know where I stop. But I'd get a map out. But Google Maps will be your friend, and I think you can get some offline versions as well. So just bear in mind you won't have access to that when you're on the road. Yeah. So if you think I'd like to travel 500 kilometres in one day, or 300, map out, say, if you're leaving from Port Augusta, if you're coming from South Australia or Victoria, you might say, okay, what's 300 kilometres up the road? Nothing. So that day I might have to go 500 kilometres or 600 to Coober Pedy. And And then there are lots of websites. See, I've put some links in the link I've given you of, where there are services and roadhouses.
I'll put those in the feed later, girls. I promise I'll put all that info in at the end. Yeah. Sorry, Laurelle.
Yeah. And yes, I suspect Claire Ann Halford may have mentioned that, because I have been made the mistake of thinking a roadhouse would be open when it wasn't, and I was needing fuel. So that didn't bother me, but that would bother a lot of other people. And that
would bother me. I'd be freaking out, particularly if I was on my own. I'd be absolutely freaking out.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to end up sleeping in the car if you're not used to that sort of thing. So yeah, be aware of the opening and closing times. Ring ahead.
Yeah.
I guess if you're traveling like you're overseas, you have your numbers and your phone numbers. And if you don't have internet access, there's always the pay phone at the roadhouse to ring ahead.
How's the mobile reception, Laurelle, now? Aside from Wi-Fi, when you say internet, do you mean the mobile phone reception as you're traveling?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There's not a lot. They've put in some towers along the way, so occasionally you might hear your phone beep as you drive through, and sometimes I've backed up if I'm backed up.
There's a hotspot. Yeah.
There's a hotspot where I may have 2 bars, and I'll go, oh, I'll just make this phone call or send this email. But most roadhouses will have some sort of satellite connectivity. So yeah, that's, there's not a lot. Don't rely on that. I hate to plug one carrier over another, but Telstra definitely has the better coverage in the Outback. So even if you get a SIM card that is a Telstra SIM card, that's a good option. So yeah.
And yesterday we were talking about the timing, because I guess a couple of things are springing to mind as you're talking too when we're planning. Aside from distances and where we want to go, there might be some interesting things along the way that you want to stop and see. But there's also the basic things like the weather. So, there are certain times of the year where you don't get much rain in the Outback, and I don't know how that changes, north-south, or whether it's more an east-west thing. Maybe you can elaborate on that. But I know from my limited experience of living in the top end, the dry season is just heavenly, which is what you're coming into now, or you could very well be in it now. And then you've got the wet season where that changes the whole ball game, really. So the weather plays a big part in the planning.
Definitely. And if you're doing a long trip, like you're 6 weeks going to do the whole territory from south to north or the other way, you've really got to take that weather into account. And that's why the dry season, we don't call it the dry season in Central Australia, it's just winter. In the top end, Darwin and surrounds, it's called the dry season because there is no rain for 6 or 7 months, 0 zip. And I miss the rain in the dry season. So you probably won't need an umbrella, but, that's between the months of April, May, September, and then as you get into October in the top end, you're getting into the build-up, which can be, if you don't like sweating, you might not like travelling in the top end at that time. And
that's when everyone goes troppo, isn't it, Laurelle? They literally do go troppo. It is a real condition where you have this build-up of humongous humidity, but dry storms where it doesn't end up, normally you get those lovely big fat raindrops coming in with a storm and it just cools everything down, but you don't get that in build-up, do you? It's just like living in a soup that never stops.
Yes, you make it sound so attractive.
I was pregnant in build-up. My daughter was born in October, so I felt every bit of that build-up, believe me.
When I moved from Alice Springs to Darwin, my skin just puffed out, like the amount of moisture in the air where, there's no moisture in the air down in Central Australia. It's as dry as anything. So, yeah, definitely, if you're travelling between November and March, April in the top end. There is so much rain usually. We've not had a very good wet season, this last one, but there is so much rain that a lot of roads close, a lot of water holes and rivers flood, so you can't access lots of places. So yeah, if the top end water holes and remote areas like in Kakadu National Park or places like that might not be accessible in the wet season. If you're camping in that same period between May and September in Central Australia, especially in June, July, you'll need your winter woolies, even probably warmer than what you might have in Melbourne or Tassie, for example. So I've camped out in my swag and woken up with ice in my hair. So there's very different climate variations from one end of the territory to the other. But our peak season for both climates, for both regions, is between May and September, October. Yeah, okay. And in Central Australia in summer it's 40 odd degrees. So if you like heat, come up. Yeah.
You like the heat. That I just put a little note there, May to September, best time for, I put inlands, or one word I can't spell, that's all quick. But I have a little story too about, we hired a motorhome and thought we were the duck's nuts, leaving from Darwin, and we were going south. And to Catherine Gorge, which is another beautiful spot. Mm-hmm. And we were laughing when we left because we were going through the van and we found all these blankets and things. And we thought, what are they thinking? Why are these in here? I tell you what, the first night we were there, so during the day it was like 35 degrees, right? And then at night time when we pulled in the campsite, by about 2 in the morning, we actually had to put the motor on and the motorhome thing to get the heating going, and all the blankets were out. We were huddled in one little tiny bed just to keep warm. It got bloody cold, and you just don't think that when the days are so hot. You don't think, I'm in the desert and this is what happens at nighttime.
Yes, yeah. And, if you live in that area, of course, the winter's a lovely reprieve from the hot months. So yeah, a lot of
so distances, and get the map out where you want to go. Think about your fuel, think about your phone connectivity, and also the weather is a big consideration. What about accommodation? So if some people might do the old van thing and take their own, but are there a fair few options for accommodation in the Outback, or do you really have to take your own swag and hope for the best?
No, there's lots of accommodation options. Like Alice Springs and Darwin, of course, the main cities, and Tennant Creek all have hotels and motels. Not a lot of 5-star, but there's a few 5-star hotels in both Alice and Darwin. So a lot of motel accommodation, and in between the 1,500 kilometres between Alice and Darwin, there's several roadhouses, so they might be cabin accommodation or, 3-star. So in the peak season, you definitely want to ring ahead and check. You don't want to turn up and there's no bed for the night. So yeah, there's a lot of accommodation options.
But you're better off kind of looking ahead and phoning up and just checking that you can get a bed. Don't just wing it, I reckon.
Especially in the peak season. You'd get a bed no problems at the moment, but
you get there.
Yeah. So sometimes I take my swag and pull up in a campground, and because I like looking up at the stars. That's the other thing about the Outback. You'll never see stars like it. And
no, absolutely. Yeah. And the colours.
Yeah. Oh, the sky is bigger. The sky is bluer. The everything, the landscape. It's just quite incredible. And I think also preparation-wise, you have to mentally prepare. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
If you haven't been to the Outback before, I often forget when I see it through new people's eyes. It reminds me that it's quite a shock to the system to not have access to whatever you want every few kilometres, you know, to pull in and get an ice cream or whatever. You know, and you might not get your double shot short black macchiato, you know.
You get the Pablo instant if you're lucky.
No, I mean, a lot of places do have coffee machines. I personally take a plunger with me when I go on an Outback road trip. But, you know, you don't have to lower your expectations, but just change your expectations. Things are slower. People live slower and people love talking, a lot of Outback characters. So stop and slow down and have a chat and get to know the people who live out here. So, you know, it's a great time to leave your city life behind, I think.
Yeah, that is a really important point that you make. That's the other wondrous bit about travelling in these parts of Australia are the characters that you do meet, and people are so happy to have a chat with you. They really are. So, you know, it's a great opportunity to just sit back and click into a low gear and just roll with it, because it really is very special like that. Very, very special.
And not forgetting, you know, we have one of the oldest Aboriginal cultures up here in the Territory, and you know, there's a lot of opportunities to experience that culture and talk to local Aboriginal people, and you know, they can be shy at times, but if you really, you know, have an open heart and an open mind, and you know, are interested in learning about something that is not your everyday, then it can be a really, I think, life-changing experience, you know.
I totally back that. That's why I really firmly believe if everyone in Australia can get up there and experience either the top end or, you know, further inland south, just do it, because it will be a life-changing experience. It's quite a spiritual experience. It's hard. I find it hard to put words to it. It's something I think that you can only really relate to when you've seen it firsthand yourself. But just that feeling of vastness, you know, that as far as the eye can see is one property potentially, and you are this very, very small speck in this huge, vast, beautiful landscape. It just takes your breath away. It
does, and it gives you a lot of respect for the people who've gone before us and explorers and you know, pastoralists who opened up the country, and even the traditional owners, you know, how they navigated this land and survived. It's there's so much to learn. A lot of people think that, you know, the big open roads, there's nothing to see. I used to have passengers going, why do we have to drive this? There's nothing to see. And I said, oh, it's full of stories. It's full of history. It's full of culture, flora, fauna. You know, you just have to open your eyes and your ears and off you go.
And know where to look. You know, that's the thing. And that's where what you've done with your audio tours is just brilliant, because it does give you that little bit of extra knowledge to be able to zap and soak up all the wonders that are before you in this, as you say, seemingly open, vast space with not much there, but there is a lot there to uncover.
There is.
Cool. Well, girls, if you've got any questions, I can see a few comments coming in. Thanks for those. Maz is here. Karen, best stars ever. I miss those stars and the colours. Couldn't agree more. The colours are like the intensity of the colours of that red and the blue. Just beautiful.
And I think next time we can get stuck into some actual travel routes, like between Alice Springs and Uluru or the West McDonnell Ranges, and talk about the actual things you can do there.
Yeah, well, why don't we do that? Girls, for those of you listening in, just put in the comments what route you would like Laurelle to talk about on her next chat about planning about an Outback road trip, which I think is around the 12th of June from memory. It's around about that time. So we've got some time to get some information together for you. So, put down what route you'd like Laurelle to talk about, and we'll do that. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll put the links in that Laurelle has given me about where to go to get more information about planning for your Outback road trip. And if you've got any other questions that you might want to ask Laurelle, she has very kindly said that she will go into the Facebook feed for us and answer those. So now's a chance. Hop to it. So lovely to see you, Laurelle. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. Thank you.
Thanks for joining in, girls. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Wednesday for the next live. Bye.
Okay.
Happy weekend.
Bye.